this turning point event sometime within the next hour. But he has been speaking to a number of US news networks and said some very bold things in the last few hours, claiming that Iran has agreed to stop backing proxies, for example, like Hamas or Hezbollah, that Iran apparently has agreed to hand over its enriched uranium. Donald Trump says that process won't require US troops on the ground. Iran's foreign ministry, on the other hand, says its enriched uranium under no circumstances will be going anywhere. But it does hold out the prospect of agreement, saying that it's possible, providing it's in Iran's national interest. So I think it's fair to say that Tehran is much more circumspect about the potential for a breakthrough here than the President of the United States. Donald Trump seemed very excited when Iran announced that it was ending the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. He posted on Truth Social 10 times in 90 minutes, initially just echoing the announcement from Iran and then clarifying that the US naval blockade would remain in place until negotiations were complete. He then said the United States would get all of what he called the nuclear dust and no money would change hands. That presumably is a reference to reports that Washington was weighing up the prospect of a deal that would see $20 billion going to Iran in exchange for that uranium to end the war. He also had another go at NATO, saying they'd called him and offered to help now that the strait was reopened, and he told them to go away. But he called it a great and brilliant day. What's interesting is that he's now saying there could be a deal in the next couple of days on Iran. And when you consider that he's also suggesting that the first meeting between a Lebanese president and Israeli prime minister in more than 40 years could take place in the next couple of weeks, I think it's clear he's trying to gather some momentum around all of this to get it all done and dusted as quickly as possible.
David, yes, thank you. And the President also saying that he could, as you say, be in Pakistan in the next couple of days to sign a deal. Benedict?
Yes, I mean, the thing is, as we sort of touched on at the start of all of this, for as long as things remain the same, it's going to be rather fraught. It's going to be rather delicate because whilst we've crossed this threshold, we have of course been in this situation before where the United States has, with Israel, pummeled Iran into a position where they've said, well, that's fine, everything's sorted now, and then here we find ourselves back where we were to begin with. So much of this, though, is at the behest of the Israeli government. If the Israelis say that the Iranians have reached a certain threshold or they've done certain things, the Israelis have made it pretty clear that they will act unilaterally if they would like to. And that's still not something I think that the United States has got a full handle on. Now, what's clearly the case
Donald
here...
Trump is saying that he's forbade Benjamin Netanyahu from striking Lebanon.
But he doesn't...
how's that going?
Exactly. He doesn't have any jurisdiction over Netanyahu. Netanyahu, like Putin, laughs at his...
So much of what Israel is currently doing, has been trying to do for the last couple of years, is to give itself more and more strategic autonomy from the United States so that US presidents can't, in fact, tell it what to do. That works for Netanyahu, works for the country as a whole. They have got a pretty good situation where the United States acts as a sort of a guarantor of their security, but they're able to drag the United States along as well. But the thing is...
Don't you think that's ridiculous?
Well, no, it's very clever politics. They've done incredibly well. If they've managed to get themselves into a situation where this very small Middle Eastern country has managed to get to a position where the greatest empire in the history of the world actually has to sort of act in this fashion when they decide to do so. Otherwise, we can sort of sit there and go, isn't it ridiculous? Or we can sit there and say, wow, haven't they played a blinder? Which they quite clearly have.
I don't know, I just find the language really disgusting when so many lives have been lost.
In what sense?
Well,
what language disgusting?
Like 75,000 Palestinians are dead.
That wasn't the question. What language do you find?
Playing a blinder is kind of disgusting.
Well, OK, 75,000 Palestinians, OK, fine. But that's happened. It's beside the point. Strategically, they have played a blinder. And whether or not you're saying it's a moral good or a moral evil is beside the point. Israel has strategic objectives. Has it met those? Very clearly it has. And if you want to sit there and you go, well, that's not the point, Israel doesn't really care. The United States doesn't really care. If we're being honest, Hamas doesn't really care. They all have strategic goals. Have they met them? Have they not? They've played a blinder in that sense.
You haven't stopped talking for a good 5 minutes.
Go ahead. Make your point again, which is to do with the language.
I'm not saying that Netanyahu cares what I think. I'm saying that when we describe this as really good gameplay and it's actually a genocide, it's extremely distressing for anybody human.
Should we?
Whoa! I mean, no, sorry. You can't just say it's disgraceful for anybody human.
Well, no, I mean,
if you're going to sort of police my language when I'm doing it, it's like, come on.
I'm not saying you're not human. I'm just saying I didn't want to say it's extremely distressing for people who've lost people, because I think it's distressing for everybody looking at the amount of death and bloodshed. I think it's really distressing.
Should we move on to Lebanon, where there has been much bloodshed, and we talk about the thousands of people that have been killed. We're now 24 hours into the 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The pause in fighting came into effect last night, but the Lebanese army claims that there's since been shelling on several villages in the south of the country. President Trump has claimed Israel is prohibited, as we were saying, from bombing Lebanon. Our lead world presenter Yalda Hakim reports now from Beirut.
They're coming back. Car after car, families are making their way south, returning to homes they fled under relentless bombardment. Traffic jams stretching for miles. Even the warnings by Hezbollah and Israel not to return are being ignored. Many have nowhere else to go. This is what a fragile truce looks like. In Dahia, the southern suburbs of Beirut, I saw what so many are now returning to. Neighborhoods devastated, lives upended.
You really can get the scale of the devastation here. Entire residential buildings have been destroyed. This is home to hundreds of thousands of people in this sprawling, densely populated community. It's also where Hezbollah has administrative offices, security offices, and financial offices. And so Israel has been hitting this community incredibly hard.
This is an area where Hezbollah has long had deep roots and where Israel says it has been targeting its infrastructure. But on the ground, it's civilians who are living with the consequences. A resident of Dahia told me he believes the strikes have been indiscriminate.
Even if there is an office for Hezbollah in the building, it doesn't mean you impact all the people living there and bring the whole thing down because of one apartment. They're able to target one specific place. They have advanced technology. It's not necessary to hit the whole thing. There are people who are not with Hezbollah. We are not part of Hezbollah. We rely on them because of what's happening, because no one else is supporting us.
It is a view echoed by many here. And even on day one, there are fears this could all break down.
We totally refuse any direct negotiations between the Israeli entity and the Lebanese state. It is unable, incapable and unauthorised constitutionally and nationally for the Lebanese leadership to give such a dangerous concession that threatens Lebanon's future.
In the southern city of Sidon, that return begins in shelters. Families who fled with almost nothing are gathering what little they have left, preparing once again to move. Lebanon's children have been forced to carry the burden of this conflict. But even amongst the uncertainty, there is still hope. Yalda Hakim, Sky News, Beirut.
Well, let's take a listen now to how European leaders reacted to the news that the Strait was reopening.
Reopening the Strait is a global necessity and a global responsibility. We need to act to get global energy and trade flowing freely again to bring down prices for working people. Our citizens need to see a return to peace and stability.
We call for the restoration of free passage conditions that existed before the war and full respect of the law of the sea.
Zoe, what's been your opinion of the way that European leaders have handled this war and Donald Trump?
Well, basically, they just only really Spain has come out strongly and said this is completely untenable foreign policy. This doesn't have a plan. This doesn't have any allies. This doesn't have any obvious purpose. And so they did look quite isolated for a bit. Everybody else was kind of dithering. And it was difficult. I could see that it was difficult because, you know, obviously everybody wanted regime change in Iran anyway. So to then come out studs first against Donald Trump was really tricky. But obviously, steadily, as Donald Trump has been more and more caustic, not least about Keir Starmer, but also about Macron, I think most European leaders are figuring out, slower than they should have done, that the only way to have any muscle on the international stage is to be in, it's like that bit in Gladiator, you know, they have to stick together, otherwise they're toast.
Sir Keir Starmer has actually come out quite strongly against Donald Trump, hasn't he? I mean, he's said on several occasions, this isn't our war. And in fact, his ratings have gone up on that appearance of standing up to Donald Trump. They have.
A lot of European leaders have come out and been sort of slowly at first and then slowly, as Zoe said, they've sort of begun to find their feet on this. And that's politically very expedient because it is going to end up hurting their publics as well, and they want to be able to separate themselves and say, well, we had nothing to do with this and we oppose this. But there's also the reality, which is that several years, and, you know, we're talking about a different war here, several years after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine and all of these promises from European nations that they were going to get serious on defence to face down Putin and Russia, they are not in any stronger a situation to face down anybody at all. They don't have the muscle, really, to turn around to the United States, certainly not Israel either. They haven't secured alternative sources of energy. They're still very dependent on fossil fuels from the Gulf. And even now, they aren't talking about strategic autonomy in terms of building up their own militaries again. And this is something that Zoe touches upon. Do they need to, sort of band together? Do they need to get around the table and form a sort of a common defence policy? Yes. Are they any closer to doing that? Not at all. They still are very disparate when it comes to, if nothing else, actually, procuring weapons, the very basic idea of procuring weapons, because every single country has its own arms industry. And this is why the United States has been able to profit off Europe for so long, because they have a unified arms industry, and it's a lot easier to sell unified systems to European nations. And now Europe is finally getting around the table and going, how is it that we actually manage this when you have the competing interests of all the different states? That's something they have to navigate, and they've still not done it yet.
I mean, there's a lot going on there, isn't there? In terms of actually their dependence on fossil fuels, it's a very mixed picture. You know, France is much less dependent than we are because of nuclear. Germany is much less dependent because of renewables. Really, the situation you describe is mainly true of the United Kingdom, which is incredibly depressing. And you know, the kind of winding down of conventional arms and militaries has been going on is going to take a long time to get to Europe to a point where they're not dependent on the US. Having said that, when you look at the amount of aid and arms support and diplomatic support going to Ukraine, the difference between the American-European split between 24, 25 and now, Europe has picked up a lot of the slack. I mean, America's putting almost nothing in anymore.
But you
it's sort of in the same situation as it was before. It was depressing to hear, like you remind us, it's several years now, that war. And everybody said without American backing, Ukraine would tumble, and that is not true and hasn't been true.
Yeah, we've spoken about how the situation for the UK is somewhat peculiar in terms of others within Europe. And we will continue to talk about Sir Keir Starmer because he has domestic issues at home. Unforgiving and staggering, those are the words from Sir Keir Starmer today during the worsening fallout in the Peter Mandelson scandal, after it emerged that Lord Mandelson failed his security vetting process for the role of US ambassador. The Foreign Office top civil servant, Sir Ollie Robbins, was sacked. His allies insist he's done nothing wrong. Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, travelled to Paris with the Prime Minister and has this report.
Back abroad, this time Paris, for talks on Iran. More weaponry on view, but far less peril than the other side of the channel. Keeping on going after Thursday night's bombshell. His pick for Washington had failed the security vetting. Starmer told everyone the reverse, and opponents now want him gone. Keir Starmer's over there, meeting Emmanuel Macron, but all the questions are about Peter Mandelson. A long way to climb to convince no one in number 10, nor any ministers, knew.
Prime Minister, politicians resign when they mislead the public and mislead Parliament. Are you considering your position?
That I wasn't told that Peter Mandelson had failed security vetting when he's appointed is staggering. That I wasn't told that he'd failed security vetting when I was telling Parliament that due process had been followed is unforgivable. Not only was I not told, no minister was told. And I'm absolutely furious about that. What I intend to do is to go to Parliament on Monday to set out all the relevant facts in true transparency so Parliament has the full picture.
Prime Minister, why do you always end up sounding like the passenger in this government rather than the driver? Are you really expecting us to believe that a senior civil servant off his own back, without any sort of direction about the importance of Peter Mandelson being ambassador, unilaterally overruled security vetting to approve a political appointment? And they made clear it was political.
I was not told that he had failed security vetting. No minister was told that he had failed security vetting. Number 10 wasn't told that he had failed security vetting.
This, the very few associates wanting non-Mandelson chat, a respite from the pressure building back home, but few smiles on show.
Either the Prime Minister is lying, or he is so incompetent that he is unfit to run the country. Either way, his position is untenable.
He'll come to the House of Commons on Monday, he'll give us a pre-prepared statement, prepared by a lawyer, he'll read it out word for word, they'll launch an investigation, but ultimately he won't survive this.
Some of his own MPs say the same.
I don't often agree with reform, and I'm not going to start now. But it's always been the process that if you mislead the House, you have to step down. And I do think the Prime Minister must consider his position.
Keir Starmer has tried to pin all of this on one top official who he sacked on Thursday night. Ministers have been going around saying the state has failed. But allies of Ollie Robbins have said he's done nothing wrong.
There's nothing to overrule. The vetting agency can make remarks if they want to, but they're not a decision-taking body. So he didn't fail vetting. If Sir Ollie is accountable for what Sir Ollie is accountable for in this decision is not overruling a decision, it's taking the decision, for better or worse, that whatever risks were identified in the vetting process could be managed.
At leisure and happy to be seen, Peter Mandelson walking the dog who accompanied him back, tail between his legs, from Washington. Prime Minister is heading home to danger. The Commons on Monday, then Ollie Robbins appears on Tuesday. At least he'll have these memories. Sam Coates, Sky News, Paris.
Sam really putting in the killer question there. Is he a passenger in this government? But he's saying, I was not told that he had failed the security vetting, referring to Mandelson. No minister was told. Number 10 wasn't told. That is completely unacceptable. So he's furious at being left out of the loop. Do we believe that?
There's no good option here. He's either completely passive, as Sam says, he's a passenger in his own government, and there was that devastating analogy in the kind of biography of him that said he was like the guy driving the DLR train. He doesn't realise that he's not driving. OK, so he's either that guy, or he's simply not telling the truth, or he's not competent. And there's a possibility that he's a mixture of those three things in varying proportions. Now, we can spend the rest of these 2 hours and the rest of the week talking about which proportions and which it is, but none of those things equip you to be Prime Minister. I mean, it's devastating.
Yeah.
Was it? what she said.
That was great. Just do that on a loop for me. But we've discussed this before, haven't we? Every time there's a new development in the Mandelson story. It didn't matter if there was an outbreak of a war or an energy price spike or whatever it was. This story was going to keep on rolling, and it was going to be the slow poison. And we said every couple of weeks, just as it's died down, it'll be back on the front pages. And whatever the angle is, people will remember, oh, that's right, the Prime Minister made this man the ambassador. And all else sort of falls by the wayside. It's a direct indictment of his judgment right there.
Yeah, sorry.
No. This is, and that's the thing. It almost doesn't matter, as Zoe says, it doesn't matter what element of Starmer's knowledge of this is at play. It doesn't matter what comes next. That's just going to be the thing that chips away at his authority. And all we are doing is basically waiting for his backbenchers to go, OK, enough is enough, and for somebody on the front bench to go, OK, I feel now is the time to actually make a move. Are we there yet? I don't know, but we're getting close.
Has it served him at all to sack Sir Ollie Robbins last night before he's going to go to Parliament and make his statement on Monday?
Well, not only has it not served him, but it's also obviously activated allies of Ollie Robbins. I mean, I didn't expect that to happen because... Actually, normally you do the work. If you're going to sack somebody and think that, like when he sacked Morgan McSweeney, you didn't suddenly get lots of McSweeney fans coming out and saying this is totally unfair, because he prepared the groundwork. He knew that was going to stanch the wound. This doesn't read. This reads like a panic sacking.
Yeah, it seems like a knee-jerk reaction to you.
And I very much doubt, because for all those reasons. Even if it was Ollie Robbins, which I very much doubt, what did Ollie Robbins do? Overrule the Prime Minister, a very senior civil servant, overrules or keeps the Prime Minister in the dark? To what purpose? I mean, if you were going to do that, which is so in breach of all your professional codes and ethics, you'd have to have something more, a bigger pot of gold at the end of it than appointing Peter Mandelson. I mean, what would Robbins' motivation?
And this is only going to get worse because Sir Ollie Robbins is going to give evidence to a committee in Parliament next week. We're told on Tuesday.
Yeah.
After Sir Keir Starmer's statement.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing what exactly he has to say. But actually, again, he could almost corroborate half of what the Prime Minister's position is.
But apparently he's seething at being sacked.
I'm not surprised that he is seething, although I think his payoff is quite handsome. But still, that point is he's been thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
He'll feel, obviously, it's unfair, but also the politician in him, and of course he's a civil servant, but every civil servant is also a politician at the same time, will be sat there going, I've been thrown under the bus for somebody who is basically already on the way out. You know, what a real
under
way.
the bus.
Yeah,
a different bus.
Exactly. The bus has already sort of gone off the cliff and he's been thrown under it anyway. But
do we know what the payoff is?
About 100 grand, I think.
I mean...
There are worse payoffs, but there are also better ones.
Well, yes. I mean, but it's not Mandelson. The thing is,
it's not just about the money, though.
No,
it's the reputation.
Okay, two things. Firstly, Peter Mandelson got paid an astronomical payoff when he was taken out of that role. So the fact that they're actually this guy, Peter Mandelson, and his behaviour in the past has really effectively destroyed this government, and it's doing so in slow motion. It destroyed the inner circle, now it's destroyed, now it's decapitated the civil service. Next, it will be Keir Starmer, and everybody knows that. Peter Mandelson, having done all that, still manages to walk away with a payoff 5 times larger than Ollie Robbins. I mean, this is ridiculous. Secondly, one of the things that those of us on the left of the party and feminists liked about Keir Starmer was his record on crimes against women and girls as DPP. He just seemed to be a completely different order of director of public prosecutions. He really seemed to take sexual violence seriously. He didn't time it out. He wouldn't allow for kind of, you know, what about you? He really determined to put this front and centre of the criminal justice system. And so this should have been the scandal that will probably bring him down, is such a terrible and tragic indication of how far he has moved as Prime Minister from the man those of us who originally admired him admired.
OK, Zoe and Bendit, we're going to take a break at this point. Coming up next, we're going to be live in Phoenix, Arizona, where Donald Trump is addressing a Turning Point event. Stay with us for that.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
You are watching The Wrap. A nursery worker has been sentenced to more than 3 years in prison for the gross negligence and manslaughter of a 14-month-old in her care. Noah Sibanda was unlawfully killed after Kimberly Cookson put him in a sleeping bag face down with a blanket over his head. The nursery then failed to check on him for 2 hours. I must warn you that this next report from our national correspondent Tom Parmenter does contain details you may find distressing.
Noah was a thriving toddler. The only reason he died was the gross negligence of the nursery he went to. Kimberly Cookson worked there and was determined to make Noah sleep. He'd already had one nap when she put him into this sleeping bag. The nursery CCTV recorded her. Against every guideline, she put Noah into a teepee, face down, with a blanket over his head.
Noah wasn't tired. He didn't want to go to sleep. She continued to pat him and she put her legs over him for several minutes. And then he wasn't physically checked upon for 2 hours. And when staff did eventually check on him, he wasn't breathing and the paramedics have been called.
His parents never saw Noah alive again.
We cannot comprehend what could justify treating a barely walking child the way Noah was treated. We never imagined that a vulnerable person, let alone the most innocent, fragile child, could be in danger in a place designed for safety, learning and protection. There's no sentence that would amount to the pain and suffering Noah was caused, or the suffering that has spread to everyone who loved him. Nothing can restore what has been taken from us. Noah deserved to live. He deserved to be protected, and we deserve to watch him grow.
The callousness shown towards Noah and replayed in full in court was sickening to watch. It was horrific to see adults with so little thought for how children were sleeping. Kimberly Cookson apologised to Noah's family and said, "I hope one day they forgive me. I never set out to harm anyone. I wanted to help children. This will haunt me for the rest of my life." What was going on in there, Mrs. Latewood? The nursery owner, Deborah Latewood, ignored us, but said in court she too was desperately sorry. Fairy Tales in Dudley had been inspected. Ofsted rated it as good in all categories, but did not examine how children were sleeping there. It is another nursery where children have been put in danger. We've seen sexual predators jailed and other cases just like Noah's. Genevieve Meehan also died in 2022 after a nursery worker in Greater Manchester put her to sleep face down on a beanbag. Both Genevieve's and Noah's parents want meaningful change, which the government has told us it is determined to deliver. These cases simply cannot happen. Noah should still be alive. His family want other nurseries to look hard at his case and do more to keep children safer. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
Well, a spokesperson for the Department for Education released this statement in which they say we are updating guidance on safer sleep this month, have written to providers to make sure they are clear of the sleep practices they must follow by law, and a safeguarding review is underway on digital devices and CCTV. With guidance to be published in the autumn, we are determined that it should not take tragedy to prompt future change. So that the response from the Department for Education to this tragic story, and actually quite distressing when you hear the details, Zoe.
It's absolutely ghastly, and when you see, it's not just the details and it's not just that grainy footage, which you almost feel like you're there and you just wish you could, you know, go back in time. It's also you never kind of, when you hear about a tragedy like this, you don't see until long afterwards the family videos. They must have shot like hundreds of hours, the way people do with their pre-walking babies, and it's just really, really grim to see.
And Benedict, the nursery in question was rated as good by Ofsted, but there wasn't an inspection into the sleeping practices they employed.
I mean, the thing that I find very difficult about this, to sort of get my head around, is what kind of guidelines can you put in place, and what kind of checks can you put in place that can possibly guard for or make allowances for the possibility that somebody who works with children regularly doesn't understand or completely misses that if you put a child of that age face down, possibly on a soft surface, and then put something over the top of them, that might not be a good idea. I mean, this is the thing. Yeah. You can put all kinds of guidelines in place and training, but if somebody on a fundamental level doesn't clock whilst they're doing that this is a bad idea, what are you supposed to do in that situation? This is the thing that really gets to me about this, is it's a basic thing. It's a basic thing that anybody should understand, that a small child cannot necessarily breathe in that situation. If somebody whose job is to look after children cannot literally put two and two together in that situation, well, I'm really at a loss. And it's very concerning, because there are going to be lots of parents who've watched not just that example, but the previous example, and say, you can't guard against this sort of thing. It's thankfully quite rare, but even so, it's happened more than once, and that's really concerning.
Yes. And she also, just to say in the details, she also put her legs over him for several minutes, and then compounded by the fact that he wasn't checked for 2 hours.
But it's every parent putting their child in a nursery. They've got this horrible ghost of a feeling that nobody's going to look after them the way they do, and you just have to squash that voice and go, of course other people can look after them, of course other people care for who doesn't care for babies. And this is going to really enliven, I'm sure, in the parents of many young children, that kind of sense that nobody else can do it, which of course is wrong. It's completely wrong. Most people have an instinctive. Most people love young children instinctively because it's kind of human nature. But it's just really a horrible.
But it is such a worry. I know that people have discussed before having CCTV in place, and maybe that will help with safeguarding. But we've got the CCTV there of the act being carried out.
We do, and I mean, that brings into question all sorts of other possible safeguarding issues around hacking, for instance. It's an incredibly vulnerable situation, having full-time video footage of children. So that brings its own safeguarding issues into account. But there's the other thing, which is that actually an awful lot of CCTV in the UK doesn't actually work. It doesn't get turned on. It doesn't get recorded because of cost-cutting measures, because people don't have the capacity. So that would require all sorts of more, capacity and training alongside that. Now, these might be very important things, but those are things that are going to have to be taken into account, is that it adds another layer of safeguarding, which, when we are talking about, children at their most vulnerable, that's something that has to be taken very seriously, because you can almost see it happening in slow motion. The cameras, being turned off, or the cameras perhaps being hacked, none of which is particularly, reassuring for parents who are already going to be sat there going, I pay through the nose for childcare. It's already a huge burden on me. Should I be looking for alternatives? It doesn't make people feel better about that situation, does it?
No, it is a worry when we're not able to ease people's worries this evening, but at least they're aware of possible situations. Let's take a look at the newspapers, the front pages for you now. A breakthrough in the Strait is the headline in The Times, as it reports on the latest hopes for a US-Iran deal. The FT describes how the Prime Minister branded the Foreign Office's handling of Peter Mandelson's vetting unforgivable. The Telegraph headline, Starmer goes to war with Whitehall as he says he was misled over Mandelson. Sacked Foreign Office boss will fight back against Starmer in public showdown is the front of the Eye. The Mail reports that Starmer's 2 top aides knew weeks ago about Peter Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador being approved despite him failing security vetting. The Express headline, Time PM took responsibility for the errors. As it says, Labour MPs have turned on Starmer over the Mandelson saga. The Guardian says Starmer has been warned he faces Judgment Day next week when he returns to face the Commons. Au revoir, the headline in The Star, as it leads with calls for Starmer to be sacked over the Mandelson saga as he visits France for talks on the Strait of Hormuz. The Mirror reports how a bride's big day was ruined by her sister-in-law throwing paint over her. Needless to say, we will not be covering that final story, but we will be having a look at the Times, first of all. The headline there, breakthrough in the Strait. We've had the announcement from President Trump today that the Strait is open for business, also saying that the US blockade will continue. So slightly mixed messages there, but take us into this, Benedict.
So, I mean, as you say, it's slightly mixed messages, and I think it's also important to recognise that the Iranians have said that the reopening of the Strait would be done in coordination with the IRGC. So I think we have to think of it very much, I think, of a sort of a, not quite a Mexican standoff, but it's a situation that temporarily suits both parties. Everybody wants their oil to get out. If one side decides that they're going to mess with the other's shipments, then that's going to be reciprocated, and then everybody gets poorer. Does that mean that the underlying reasons for the conflict breaking out have disappeared? No, they clearly haven't. The IRGC, for a start, is still in a position, if it likes, to not coordinate with the opening of the Strait, which means that its military capacity is still there to some level. Then, of course, there is the question around Lebanon and Israel. It's a temporary ceasefire. You know, we've seen them break down very quickly in the past. I think it's a very fragile situation. Obviously, everybody would like it to succeed because, as Zoe was talking about earlier on in the show, there is already a priced-in energy price spike coming, and with that, shortages of many other goods. If this can be elongated, maybe it won't be very long, but still, this is, I think, one that has to be approached with hesitancy. Obviously, it's to be welcomed, but let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, and the Iranians and the US are saying completely different things. You know, the Iranians suggesting that they have reached this ceasefire because Lebanon was part of it. Donald Trump saying, no, that's not the reason.
I mean, it's impossible to tell. I watched, because Trump has been doing this all the way through since the war started at the end of February. He says, I've been in talks with Iran, and Iran says, we weren't there at the talks. He says we're nearly at a breakthrough. I've got 10 demands. They're bound to concede to my demands. Iran can name 12 and doesn't concede to half of them. It's completely impossible to tell what's going on. And the weird thing is that when Iran says, when Iranian state-backed media say a thing, because, you know, there's kind of enough Iranology through the mists of time that people can say, oh, well, you know, the leader is being ventriloquized into this newsreader because of X, Y, Z, might be injured, might not. You can kind of patchwork together from what you know about the regime and its personnel, what's going on when they deny or confirm. Trump, you cannot do that. You don't know whether he's on the level, you don't know whether he's forgotten, you don't know whether he's changed his mind in the middle of the speech, you don't know whether... You just cannot tell what's true and what's not. So it's, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't... If my livelihood were dependent on guessing how much oil is going to get through every day for the next month, I'd rather be betting on the GGs.
No, people still called it that.
Nobody does.
But you. The Iranian Foreign Ministry, that a spokesperson there, saying that Iran's enriched uranium is not going to be transferred anywhere. And this is off of the back of Donald Trump saying that they've agreed not to further enrich uranium. And whatever is left will be exported to the United States.
Yeah, this is, and again, this is why I say that you can't sort of say anything about this conflict coming to a pause, because the United States has made it very clear that it's not prepared to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Israel has been much more forthright about saying what it's prepared to do to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Now, there is precedent for countries handing over their material in the past, be that nuclear, be that other things. Gaddafi being a very good example. Sometimes it does happen, but I don't think anybody believes that the Iranian regime is quite at that stage yet. It's been building towards what it sees as parity with Israel, if you like, the ability to get nuclear weapons and to be therefore able to face down that threat for decades. I don't think, given that that is its be-all and end-all, that it's prepared to give up on that at this moment. And also it's not prepared to give up on that, given that it has also seen that a lot of the neighbouring Gulf states are not as powerful as perhaps they would quite like to be without the assistance of the United States. There is somehow in all of this, the opportunity for Iran to become even more influential if the United States blinks first and pulls back, and Iran is able to continue with its nuclear material. Why would it give it up at this point?
But Donald Trump is saying that that's the crux of everything, of the negotiations, and he's gone as far as to say that, you know, he'll probably be in Pakistan in a couple of days signing a deal with Iran. But yet we know tonight that Iran is not going to give up their uranium enrichment program.
I mean, the irony is that if Trump were genuinely to make Iran a less serious nuclear threat, he probably would have done the most helpful thing that... I mean, he probably would have done something which kind of, you know, soft.
Might he even get a peace prize out of it?
Exactly. Because
he's got one of those.
Because, you know, the fact that we don't talk about nuclear threat anymore does not mean that it's gone away, and it's extremely combustible, especially in the Middle East. You know, we talk about North Korea having nuclear weapons, but we don't talk about Israel. We talk about Iran having a development program, but we don't talk about the fact that non-proliferation treaties are kind of falling apart in the rest of the world. So if he really pulled this off, I would have to say that that was a good thing. But obviously, he's done none of the kind of due diligence. He's done none of the kind of diplomatic overtures. This was what Obama spent a huge amount of his presidency trying to get a similar deal and almost had it.
Which he scrapped. But the irony is that he might have to come around and agree, hopefully as good a deal as Obama did originally.
But of course, the argument that was put forward by opponents of that deal was that the Iranians used the resources that they got as part of that to arm proxy groups around the region that did an awful lot of damage and destabilisation, and they continue to enrich uranium anyway. Now, we don't necessarily know how true that is. The Israelis say that they have plenty of evidence that it's the case. And again, then we go back to the other element in all of this, which is that it's not just the United States and Iran. Israel has a say as well. And if the Israelis, which, to be fair, have demonstrated they've penetrated swathes of Iran's security infrastructure before, if they say that they have that capacity, they will go with or without the United States.
Benedict, we must take a break. When we come back, we'll be in Phoenix, Arizona, where Donald Trump will be addressing a turning point event very shortly.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
You are watching The Wrap, but we are going to take you to all of the sports news now with Gavin.
John will, talks about it as the best medical he ever failed. It seems strange you get so far down the line and a player of his calibre, the possibility of signing him, it would have been a massive threat had he signed for Rangers, but thankfully he didn't.
It's very, very seldom you see a player in the building walking around at a club and the deal isn't done, but historically Rangers have been stung a couple of times signing players who had glitches, you might say, in America. Famously Daniel Prodan was one a number of years earlier, but there had been others as well, and I think they'd reached the stage where they weren't going to take any more risks.
And then I failed a medical at Charlton.
John Hartson was last week tipped to be on his way across South London for £5 million. But for the time being, that seems a dead deal.
Been a lot of speculation, and if there was any chance, it would have been done.
Spent the day with Alan Kirbishley, walking around the valley and being in the training ground. And I was training every day. I was scoring goals every weekend. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't pass a medical because of this knee.
I'm not bitter, no, not at all. I'm not a bitter person, I just get on with life. I've got no problems with my knee or nothing, I'm lashing balls in and everything else. And it does get a bit, frustrating at times. People keep going on about medicals and that, so that does unsettle me a little bit.
I shouldn't think you want to see another one again, do you?
No, I don't. I don't want to do any more medicals, to be honest.
So I'm starting to question myself. I think my previous managers were saying, John's fine. He's doing everything asked of him on the training ground. He's playing every week. He's scoring goals. But for some reason, I just couldn't pass this medical. And it was very, very frustrating. It was quite worrying, actually. I'm starting to think, well, where do I go from here?
As transfer soap operas go, this one was beginning to rival Coronation Street. Wimbledon have waived their £5 million fee. The Sky Blues will pay every time the Welsh international pulls on their shirt.
He's had injuries, but if you look at his record playing, he plays a lot of games.
It's all about pressure, this game, anyway. If you can't handle pressure, you're in the wrong game.
I actually failed the medical first time around at Coventry, but it was Gordon Strachan that pushed it forward and obviously did the deal.
We tried to buy John from Wimbledon a few months before, but then Rangers came in. John failed the medical. We went back to Wimbledon, ended up doing a deal with Wimbledon to buy John for $750,000. I trusted Gordon implicitly. If Gordon felt strongly enough and he'd got a commitment out of John, that John knew his own body, he'd certainly not miss games for the sake of his knee.
Coventry City are doomed. So First Division football, 34 years of top-flight football comes to an end.
He was only played 12 games at the end of that season for us, but he certainly gave his all. The shame was, and I think we...
Next to you and
Thank you very much. Wow. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Well, I want to thank all those seniors, but I want to thank all the young people. I've never seen so many young people in my life. And I want to say a special hello to Phoenix. We had a big win in Phoenix and a big win in Arizona and a big win all over the country. I'm thrilled to be back in the great state of Arizona with the hardworking, God-fearing patriots of Turning Point Action and Turning Point USA. 7 months ago, our country lost a fearless warrior, my friend, for freedom, and he was just an amazing man. He was an amazing person. Charlie Kirk, just an amazing guy. Charlie was murdered by a cruel and vicious assassin who believed that by silencing his voice, he could kill an entire giant movement. But standing here today, it's clear to see that Charlie's voice is not silenced, it's roaring and roaring back, louder, frankly, than ever before. His message is unstoppable, his mission is totally unstoppable, and his movement is forget it. It's not going to happen any other way but success. It's amazing what he's done. He was such a great friend of mine. We talked all the time. We'd speak all the time. We talked about politics. We talked about God. We talked about everything you can talk about. He was a special person. And I want to just thank Erica. She was put into a rough situation. Don't kid yourself. That's a rough situation. Those people think it's easy. I told her, not so easy, Erica. But she loved that man more than anything else, and she's done a really terrific job. I want to thank her on behalf of all of us. Because together we're making America great again, and this November, we're going to win the midterms. We're going to win, and we're going to win like never before. For some reason, even if you have a great presidency, if you haven't, I don't think there's been one like this. And we have some good news I'll tell you about a little. Would anybody like to hear about Iran a little bit? You know, this was scheduled a long time ago, and I said, let's not do any media for a little while. Here I am. This is sort of interesting. They're all waiting. Look at all the fake news back there. It's unbelievable. And we could fill this place up 4 times. Would anybody like to give up your seat? Allow somebody to... But it's really been an incredible period of time, and I'll tell you about it. But in 2024, Turning Point's grassroots army helped us win Arizona in an absolute landslide. We won this one. We won all 7 swing states. We won the Electoral College 312 to 226. We won the popular vote by millions of votes, and we won, and that's the first time in decades that a Republican, I don't know what that's all about, won the popular vote, but we won by a lot, and we won 86% of all counties. Now think of that. Counties, to me, that's the biggest of all, most important of all. 86% of all counties in America, 2,700 to 525. That's called a landslide. And I want to thank everybody at Turning Point Action who's working tirelessly to help us get out the vote this November 3rd. And I especially want to thank all of the executives and Erica Kirk in particular. Thank you. This will be a great and brilliant day for the world because Iran has just announced that the Strait of Hormuz is fully open and ready for business and full passage. But the naval blockade, with the greatest navy in the world, from the greatest military the world has ever seen, we built it during my first term. We built it. They said I was crazy. We weren't so crazy, were we? We'll remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete and fully signed. And this process, we're getting along well, but who knows with anyone, but who knows with Iran in particular. This process should go very quickly, and that most of the points are already negotiated and agreed to. You'll be very happy. The USA will get all nuclear dust. You know what the nuclear dust is? That was that white powdery substance created by our B-2 bombers, those great B-2 bombers, late one evening, 7 months ago. No money will exchange hands in any way, shape, or form. Iran will be, and you know how we're going to get the dust, right? Iran, we were going to take it anyway, but taking it that way is slightly more dangerous, but we were going to get it anyway. But Iran, with the help of the USA, has removed or is removing all of the sea mines, and most importantly, it never agreed, and you'll understand, they will never have a nuclear weapon. They will never have a nuclear weapon. And somebody said, how are we going to get the nuclear dust? We're going to get it by going in with Iran, with lots of excavators, because the B-2s, remember when fake news CNN said, well, maybe obliteration is too strong a word, obliteration. That's so deep. We need the biggest excavators you can imagine, but we're going to go in together with Iran, we're going to get it, and we're going to take it back home to the USA. Very simple. And now that the Hormuz Strait situation is almost over, I received a call from NATO asking if we would like some help. Thank you very much, NATO. And I told them I would have liked your help 2 months ago, but now I really don't want your help anymore. Because they were absolutely useless when we needed them. But actually, we never needed them. They needed us. They need us. They need us so badly. You know, it's a little bit like if you're a politician. It's hard to believe I'm a politician, but after I won, people came up to me, sir, I'd like to make a major contribution to your campaign. And I said, listen, just so you understand, campaign contributions after I won don't count. Okay, they don't count. And NATO, after we won, that doesn't count either. It's the same thing. But you have to remember that because we spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year. We spend money. We spend, I would say, in many cases, close to $1 trillion over a couple of years. $1 trillion is to help them. And we're always helping them. And this was just a military excursion. This isn't the big time. You know, we built a military so great. I'm so proud of it. It's one of the, including Space Force. You know, you see all of that. When you see those rockets go one, look up there, there's Space Force. We all created Space Force. It didn't exist. We were losing to China and to Russia in space, and now we're so far ahead of them both, you wouldn't believe it. But yesterday, on top of it all, we achieved what everyone said was impossible, an unprecedented ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, and that hasn't taken place in 78 years. 78 years. Our deal with Iran is not in any way tied to Lebanon, but we will make Lebanon great again. I mean, it's about time we've sort of, the world has forgotten them, and they're good people who have lived like hell for a long period of time, and hopefully the situation with Hezbollah will get straightened out quickly. But I want to thank the country of Pakistan and its great prime minister and its great, great field marshal. He's our great field marshal. Two fantastic people for helping. They really are terrific people. And I also want to thank Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. They've been amazing. They've all helped tremendously, tremendously. And it took courage for them. Not easy, not easy. They were living with what they call the bully of the Middle East. They had the bully. Iran was the bully of the Middle East. They're not the bully anymore. With the help of everyone here today, this has been by far the most successful first year of any administration in the history of our country, acknowledged by everybody. To begin with, I ended 8 wars, and it may be a little early to say this, but if we add Iran and Lebanon, that will be 10 wars ended and many, many millions of lives saved. Think of how many lives we've saved. Starting on day 1, we ended the illegal invasion of America. That's an invasion by criminals, many, many criminals, murderers, drug dealers, prisoners. They emptied out their prisons into our country. And we took the most dangerous, unsafe, violent, and open border and created the most secure border in U.S. history, one of the most secure borders anywhere in the world, with 0 illegal aliens coming into our country in the past 11 months. 0. And in 2025, we achieved the largest drop in violent crime ever recorded. That's despite all of these people that came into our country. Many of them are now gone, I'm pleased to tell you. The murder rate, isn't it a terrible thing to be talking about murder rate? But you got to say it. At least if it's good news. I guess it's good news. But the murder rate reached the lowest level in over 125 years. 1900. The year 1900, before my father was born. My father was great. Before he was born, the flow of deadly fentanyl pouring across our border is down by an astounding 59%. And as you probably noticed, if you watch the news, illegal drugs coming in by ocean or sea are down by 97%. 97. Boom, boom. And we're trying to find out who the 3% is, because I consider them to be perhaps the bravest people anywhere in the world. Boom. Or they don't watch television or something. We passed the largest tax cuts in American history, the largest spending cuts in American history, the largest regulation cuts in American history, and the largest investment in border security in the history of our country. And starting my first day in office, we banned the transgender mutilation of our children. And we made it the official policy of the United States of America that there are only 2 genders, male and female. That was easy. Could you imagine if I was up here 20 years ago or 15 years ago, probably 12 years ago, and I said, there are only 2 genders, male and female. People would say, what the hell is he saying that for? Is he crazy? That's got to be the worst speech I've ever heard. Why is he saying that? Or why is he saying that we got men out of women's sports?
OK, we're going to leave Donald Trump for the moment in Phoenix, Arizona, at that Turning Point event. I think it's safe to say he was going over all of his greatest hits. We'll speak to David Blevins about that. Much of it we'd heard many, many times before, David.
Yes, I think the top line from his remarks regarding Iran are that it is going very well. The process should go quickly. Most points have already been negotiated. And then it felt like the president was simply reading his Truth Social posts. And there have been many of them over the last few hours telling us that it was a great and brilliant day for the world that Iran had reopened the Strait of Hormuz, but clarifying that his naval blockade would remain in place until all transactions were completed 100%. He said he again insisted that the United States would get what he described as all the nuclear dust with Iran's help, that it wouldn't require US troops on the ground. Earlier, he had posted that there would be no money changing hands in relation to that. That's because there were reports that Washington was considering a $20 billion cash for uranium deal to get this war ended. Now, I think it is worth stressing that Iran's foreign ministry says under no circumstances will its enriched uranium be going anywhere, but it is still holding out the prospect of agreement if that agreement is in Iran's national interest. So the president seems buoyant, seems very hopeful that this could all be wrapped up even this week. And he talked a little about Lebanon as well, but he's been speaking at this Turning Point event in Arizona, where he's really focusing on his domestic agenda, but taking the opportunity to talk about his foreign policy too.
Iran has just announced that the Strait of Hormuz is fully open and ready for business and full passage. But the naval blockade, with the greatest navy in the world, from the greatest military the world has ever seen, we built it during my first term. We built it. They said I was crazy. We weren't so crazy, were we? Will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete and fully signed.
So the US blockade is still in place, but the Strait of Hormuz is completely open.
It's completely... But this is it, and this is what really terrifies me about Donald Trump, is that he doesn't... He almost throws misinformation down like a gauntlet and kind of dares you to... He dares you to call him on it. He dares you to ask for verification. He dares you to ask for corroboration. And then if you do, he'll just come back with a bigger lie or a contradiction or something equally wrong but maybe better meant. It's like being in an abusive relationship. Every time you go back for clarification and think you're going to get somewhere, you just get thrown on a mad goose chase.
But as David Blevins was saying, Benedict, he's quite positive about this being the end of the war with Iran and suggesting that as soon as a couple of days he could be in Pakistan to sign a deal.
I mean, listen, it's entirely possible, but we often hear this kind of bluster from Donald Trump, which is that he tries to talk things up, talk it again, because he doesn't want to spook, as much as anything else, at an event, you know, in front of his staunchest supporters. He's not going to want to turn around and say to these people, to whom he promised no more forever wars, looks like we're in another forever war, guys. That's not great.
That's exactly it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when you look at the way he tweeted before the election, about if you elect Kamala, you'll be in another Middle Eastern forever war. He doesn't care about consistency. He doesn't care about what he said in the past, what he said yesterday, what he might say tomorrow. All those kind of norms of being able to predict a person by the promises they've made and the character you know them to have, those are done.
And David, it does take two sides to start a war and also to end a war. We're hearing very positive things from Donald Trump about that war coming to an end, but not so much from the Iranians.
Yes, and there's considerable scepticism among his NATO allies, of course, as well. Just before he left the White House yesterday for events in Las Vegas and Phoenix, I asked President Trump how he thought his European and UK allies would respond to the ceasefire in Lebanon. And he said they weren't there for us. They've never been there for us. And he told me that the United States contributed trillions of dollars every year to NATO. Now, that's simply not the case. He has just told this audience that the United States contributes hundreds of billions of dollars to NATO. What was worrying, I think, for NATO is the rapturous applause for those remarks. His audience are lapping that up. He is claiming that he is now depending on his allies in the Middle East. You heard him give them a shout-out, talking about places like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Qatar. Really, that's an illustration of the realignment in geopolitics. That's where Donald Trump is focusing his attention now. But as far as he's concerned, there is still the potential for a deal in the coming days. And the fact that he's talking about it coming about so quickly, and also talking up the fact that he could bring together a Lebanese president and an Israeli prime minister for the first time in 40 years over the next couple of weeks, suggests that he really is trying to wrap all of this up quickly. Now, we all know he will then claim credit for it. He will say he is the peacemaker. But many people would point out that he's really only ending wars he started, or at least that he reignited.
Indeed. David, thank you so much for the moment. Well, our security and defence analyst, Michael Clark, has this assessment of what the reopening of the Hormuz Strait means.
The Iranian government has said that they will open the straits completely for as long as the ceasefire lasts. Now, that's a smart move on their part. It makes them look reasonable, whereas closing the straits in the first place was very unreasonable. And it gives the Americans an incentive not to start the war again on Wednesday if there isn't a deal by then, which is what they said that they will do. So it piles the pressure on the United States. Hormuz is now open again, thank goodness for that, but it will close again if the Americans relaunch their attack next week.
So that the point to be taken in, that the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz is only for the duration of the ceasefire, 10 days.
Yeah, and we've already seen sort of previous attempts to try and get the two sides to agree to a ceasefire. Well, I said the two sides, the four sides, if we're being honest about this, to agree to maintain a ceasefire. We've seen that fall down in the past. And, you know, that's just what we have to sort of remember about all of this, is that actually I don't think any of the sides involved are any closer to achieving what they would consider to be their strategic goals. The lifeline of the Iranian economy is obviously fossil fuels. The United States is under tremendous pressure from its allies around the world, including in the Gulf, to maintain their ability to bring in their sources of cash. So it's in everybody's interest for this particular thing to remain the case. But of course, it's also the #1 way of inflicting the most amount of damage on the other side as well. So it's an incredibly tricky situation. And all it takes is for one party to this to actually decide, no, actually, we're going back to the drawing board, for the whole thing to collapse again.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because both people look at it and say which of these nations between Iran and the US are better able to withstand pain. Iran, of course, doesn't have to listen to the complaints of its citizens because then they're not citizens, but then neither does the US really. People, you know, are they that worried about getting punished at the midterms? That kind of masochistic, competitive masochism on behalf of your populace is such a kind of horrible thing to watch. But it also is something that the Europeans have inevitably roped into, as well as everybody else. So we're all having to be dragged into the kind of sink of this kind of self-sabotage by nations who think there's something kind of macho in being able to withstand more.
Roped in, when you use that term, you mean in terms of the economic...
Just in terms of
fallout.
the economic impacts, in terms of the degradation of the international order, in terms of the fact that what does NATO look like at the end of this, in terms of everything, you know, in terms of do we have another global recession? It's like, it's massive.
Let us move on to domestic matters now. And Sir Keir Starmer, unforgiving and staggering. Those were his words today during the worsening fallout in the Peter Mandelson scandal, after it emerged that Lord Mandelson failed his security vetting process for the role of US ambassador. The Foreign Office's top civil servant, Sir Ollie Robbins, has been sacked over the scandal. His allies insist he's done nothing wrong, and opposition leaders have reacted with disbelief, demanding the Prime Minister's resignation.
What people at home want is someone in charge of our country who is not dishonest and who knows what he is doing. This scandal is showing that that man is not Keir Starmer. Leaders have changed during crises before. What people at home will be worried about is what is going on if this man is in charge.
7 months ago, this issue was raised, suspicions that Mandelson had failed vetting, yet the Prime Minister carried on, and ever since that moment, when questioned, he has misled the House of Commons and, I believe, lied to the British public.
Well, Sky's Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has been speaking to the Prime Minister in Paris.
Prime Minister, politicians resign when they mislead the public and mislead Parliament. Are you considering your position?
That I wasn't told that Peter Mandelson
had failed security vetting when he's appointed is staggering. That I wasn't told that it failed security vetting when I was telling Parliament that due process had been followed is unforgivable. Not only was I not told, no minister was told. And I'm absolutely furious about that. What I intend to do is to go to Parliament on Monday to set out all the relevant facts in true transparency so Parliament has the full picture.
Benedict, do you believe that he's absolutely furious?
I believe that he is absolutely furious, not necessarily because of the sequence of events as have been sort of set out by him, but certainly I think that he would consider his mounting misfortunes, having made this decision to appoint Peter Mandelson, that everything, therefore, as a result of this, is causing him supreme irritation, because it's just making his life more and more difficult. And I think everybody understands now this is almost certainly going to be the thing in the long run that does for him, because it is just going to continue to affect his popularity with his backbenchers and members of the front bench and the public. Everybody can see it all the time. There's no getting away from it. It's not going away. It's not going to be resolved in a timely fashion. It probably won't even be resolved whilst he's still Prime Minister, actually. It'll sort of keep on rumbling for a very long time. So can I understand and do I believe that he is very... that he is furious? Yes. He thought he was going to have a nice 5 years of being the adult in the room after the mess that the Conservatives had left. He was going to give us boring, grown-up politics, and he has dropped the ball pretty spectacularly on something that actually he, of all people, should possibly have seen coming.
So it's like death by a thousand cuts, isn't it? Well, what is he going to say in Parliament on Monday?
I was just watching that clip he gave to Sam. When he's saying... It's absolutely staggering that I wasn't told that the vetting hadn't been passed, that no minister was told. I was thinking, I cannot imagine him actually saying that as a lie, straight to a human on camera. It's just, it's not that I think he's an honest person. It's that lawyers are very risk averse, right? You don't just lie. So there's going to be something in the wording that is technically true, but the actual sentiment is wrong. So there's going to be something like, you know, the thing that we think is called vetting isn't the thing that's called vetting. There's going to be something technically true in what he's saying. And I think, as Benedict says, I think his anger is real. He's absolutely furious to have egg all over his face again about a scandal of his own making. Now, I was at an event quite full of Labour people and psephologists this morning, and Neil Kinnock, who's, a giant of a person, was very, very loyal to Labour. You know, he was like, no, this is fine, he's going to weather it, it's not a problem. He had some salty words about Peter Mandelson, but, you know, the leadership could survive. Generally, though, even Starmer loyalists are, like, open-mouthed about how impervious he seems to be to everyone being out to get him. It's bizarre. He's got... Nobody's coming out to bat for him. Nobody wants to support him. He's hated by completely disparate quarters, you know, from the Tribune to the Telegraph. He's like across the political spectrum. People are united. It's so strange that he seems to kind of quite robotically go in and think, well, this is just politics as normal. And you're like, no. You know, every politician has to have a thick skin, but it can't be so impermeable that they can't tell the difference between quotidian unpopularity and like an absolute hate mob wherever you go.
Well, I mean, one of the papers, I can't remember which one it is saying that, you know, Labour... MPs are now openly coming out against him. Interestingly, it was just the front page, I think. They didn't give any names, but when your own side is saying, you know, the game's up.
Well, you'd hope. You'd hope, at least. But, you know, it seems to be that this is... If you were to sort of use the Japanese soldier in the jungle analogy, he might, in fact, be the last remnant of the Boris Johnson administration. He's the only one who thinks if you just bury your head in the sand long enough, the problem will go away, which is dreadfully ironic, given that he set himself up as the that person.
I know.
Everything was going to be difficult, but they both seem to have this attitude, which is that I can weather the storm regardless of what's thrown at me. Now, what I would say is that I think that the Labour Party has been, or traditionally has been, much less keen to get rid of leaders in these situations because they understand how power works, they understand how instability works. But I have to say, on the subject of, let's be clear here, as much as sort of Partygate and all that was very upsetting and irritating in a very febrile atmosphere, I don't actually think you can compare it to basically taking a man like Peter Mandelson, given what was going on with his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and what Jeffrey Epstein had been convicted of. You can't take that and then say, oh, I made this man my ambassador, the most important diplomatic role. Whoops, what was I thinking? I was misled. It's an incredibly serious allegation. There's no coming back from it.
The paper that I was referring to is the Daily Express. Time PM took responsibility for the errors. Furious Labour MPs have turned on Keir Starmer as they urged him to take the blame for the Peter Mandelson scandal. That was the paper. We're going to be looking at some of the other papers. Coming up, Andrew Malkinson, a man wrongly jailed for 17 years for a rape attack, sees the real offender convicted in court. Stay with us for more on that.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Andrew Malkinson, a man wrongly jailed for 17 years for a rape attack, has called for police officers to be held responsible for the miscarriage of justice. He reacted after sex offender Paul Quinn was found guilty of the sex attack on the young mother as she walked home in Salford in July 2003. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, reports.
Andrew Malkinson spent 17 years in prison for a rape he didn't carry out. When his conviction was quashed, it left a question. If he didn't do it, who did? It was in the early hours of a summer morning in 2003 that a young woman was dragged into these bushes in Salford. She was beaten, choked and raped. An e-fit of the attacker led to the identification of Mr. Malkinson, but his conviction is now recognised as one of this country's worst miscarriages of justice. Because years after his conviction, a DNA sample was obtained from the victim's clothing, showing that he wasn't the attacker. But it wasn't until 2022 when that DNA sample was linked to a man called Paul Quinn.
How has your DNA, which is 1 in 1 billion, ended up on her tongue?
I really don't know. Because I did not do this offence. There's got to be some explanation I can't think of.
Quinn continued to deny he was the rapist, a man convicted of indecent assault when he was 12, who as a 16-year-old raped a 12-year-old girl, and a man who put his victim from 2003 through a second trial before being found guilty.
We knew that she could at any point turn around and say, I'm not going to support this investigation, you got it wrong the first time, why would I trust you a second time? We will be always grateful to her for trusting us, giving evidence for a second time at court. It's an ordeal the first time for any victim of a sexual attack of this nature. To do it twice, it says everything about her strength of character.
How that first investigation got it so wrong is the subject of an inquiry and an investigation by the police watchdog.
I'm aware that Mr Malkinson has made allegations against GMP, and who would blame him? He was imprisoned for 17 years. There is a difference between corruption and human error made within certain elements of the case, but we really need to understand how those errors occurred and why those errors occurred. And only at that point will we be able to understand whether there is blame for the police, for anybody else. And indeed, if there is, I can assure you we will learn from that, because we cannot let this happen again.
In a statement, Andrew Malkinson said, "I am content that the right result has finally been achieved for the victim, myself and the public. But the truth is that if the police had acted as they should have done, Paul Quinn could have been caught a long time ago. Instead, they wanted a quick conviction, and I was a handy patsy, forced to spend 17 years in prison for his horrific crime. All those responsible for allowing this dangerous man to wander free whilst I was locked up must now be held to account." What's your message to Andrew Malkinson at the end of this trial now?
We are really sorry to Andrew Malkinson. We remain really sorry and always will be. What happened to him has made this investigation completely unique, because not only have we got the victim of this horrific attack, but we've got a victim in Andrew Malkinson as well. So whilst I know that saying sorry, it may sound like empty words, I want him to know it's been hugely important to us that we get this right for the victim and that we get this right for him.
Justice in this case for the victim and for Andrew Malkinson took a long time to come. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Perhaps the worst injustice in the UK, 17 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and the police say sorry.
I mean, it's horrifying for the length of the prison sentence and also with the severity of what he was then attached with, thought of. One of the worst crimes that you can commit. And I think, obviously, it's really very much an eye-opening situation when you think about the possibilities that that's still possible in our criminal justice system. And I also think it really highlights the need for the proper funding and, frankly, oversight of our criminal justice system. And it's really interesting that this is now happening at the exact moment, of course, that we're talking, once again, about backlogs in the criminal justice system in courts to do with policing, and, of course, the suggestion that there may be scaling back of jury trials in some cases. And I think it's a very poignant thing, therefore, that we are discussing the fate of somebody who has lost a great chunk of their life, has suffered an appalling situation, and at the same time, here we are talking about maybe getting rid of something that was, initially installed to prevent injustices of form from being meted out by the state. And I think that that's something that perhaps needs to be borne in mind here.
Zoe, how are the police held accountable, though, for this
this is
atrocious
exactly
mistake?
it, right? Because given that they were... There's every suggestion that a lot of people knew they had the wrong guy by 10 years after the conviction. And so just whether it's the wheels of justice turning exceeding slow or people trying to cover their asses, or it took a phenomenally long time from the recovery of the DNA, which proved it wasn't him, and his actual release. So not only does he have the original kind of insult that he's in prison for something he didn't do. Bear in mind, of course, once you're in prison, that you're sort of kind of not really part of the rehabilitative journey unless you admit your guilt. It's a kind of precept that everybody's guilty. Nobody goes around, prison warders don't go around going, oh, maybe he didn't do it. So the experience of being in prison and not guilty is extremely lonely because you can't go on you can't kind of take part in any of the personal growth that you're sort of meant to be there for. So that's very lonely. Then he spends unnecessary years there while they know that the DNA isn't his. Then when you get out, not only has the apology from the police been weak, you get charged, you get compensation for the wrongful imprisonment, but you get charged bed and board for being in prison.
Yes, I have.
Which is outrageous. Isn't that outrageous?
Heard this before.
So this guy's basically, all his adult life has been one institution or another, absolutely, royally treating him badly.
Mm. But we have seen the conviction, though, of Paul Quinn found guilty, but very, very many years later. We are going to take a look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers for you now. Breakthrough in the Strait is the headline in The Times as it reports on the latest hopes for a US-Iran deal. The FT describes how the Prime Minister branded the Foreign Office's handling of Peter Mandelson's vetting unforgivable. The Telegraph headlines Starmer goes to war with Whitehall as he says he was misled over Mandelson. Sacked Foreign Office boss will fight back against Starmer in public showdown. The Eye says Ollie Robbins is set to dispute the Prime Minister's version of events as he prepares to defend himself. The Mail reports that Starmer's two top aides knew weeks ago about Peter Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador being approved despite him failing security vetting. The Express headline, Time PM took responsibility for the errors, as it says Labour MPs have turned on Starmer over the Mandelson saga. The Guardian says Starmer has been warned he faces Judgment Day next week when he returns to face the Commons. Au revoir, the headline in The Star, as it leads with calls for Starmer to resign over the Mandelson affair as he visits France for talks on the Strait of Hormuz. The Mirror reports how a bride's big day was ruined by her sister-in-law throwing paint over her. But we start with the Financial Times. The price of oil plunging. This is on the announcement that the Strait of Hormuz is now open for business, says Donald Trump, despite the US blockade still continuing.
Yes, tentatively, things are moving in what would hope to be a positive direction. Oil prices tumbling down, I think it's 11% to $88 a barrel. And, of course, it's not so long ago that many people, including, of course, the Iranians, were saying oil could go to $200 a barrel. And, we were talking about the true calamities that would happen if that happened. Now, that's, again, needs to be clear. There is nothing to say that actually the hostilities won't restart again properly and that the strait may not be closed. But I do think a couple of things. For a start, it shows just how so much of the developed world, even as it tries to pivot towards net zero, is still beholden to fossil fuels, that everybody's sort of waiting on tenterhooks to see what happens to the price of oil and whether or not this can carry on. And also it does highlight, as an extension of that, the real influence that this part of the world has played for so long, and actually, if we're taking sort of an extension of that, the influence that Iran, sort of perhaps unknowingly to a lot of people, and its capacity to wage war on the region has played over the fates of many industries as a result of that.
But the funny thing about that is that Iran wouldn't have gone into this. Iran, it turned out, held an extremely strong hand, which it wouldn't have played if Donald Trump hadn't started the war, right?
It was a strong hand, although, of course, then I think the reason why the strait is potentially being reopened is because I don't think the Iranians thought for a second the United States would then go all in on them also trying to close Iranian sales as well. So it's a real kind of game of brinksmanship. And I think that the Iranians, what I would say is that this demonstrates how seriously the Iranians took the threat to their state, if you like, that they went for this option early, they went hard, they weren't expecting the US, I think, to then do the same thing, which is why we've now got a situation where both sides are going, listen, actually, this could be incredibly damaging for all of us. Yeah. Maybe we need to take a step back.
But in the scheme of things, has this just served to highlight the power that the Iranians have through the Strait of Hormuz,
it's
the leverage that they have with that?
A huge amount of things. Firstly, the power they have over the oil consumption of the entire world. Secondly, that even a minor blip can really derail the kind of an oil tanker moves at the speed of a bicycle. So if you have 7 weeks when it's disrupted, that's going to have reverberations into the world economy for months and months and months. And, thirdly, the renewables point is well made, but, nobody's energy prices are going to come unstuck from fossil fuels until they make a deliberate choice to separate the carbon unit price from the green unit price. And when that happens, and China's already thinking about it, Europe is already thinking about it, when that happens, fossil fuel has kind of almost obviated itself because it's going to be much cheaper.
If I could, just one other thing that it has also highlighted is, despite the talk about the move towards drone warfare and more sort of remote forms of warfare and the weaknesses of conventional technology, actually what this also shows is the power of still being a naval power. The United States is able to reach halfway across the world, close another country's ports off completely. Even though that country has access to drones and missiles, the US can still do that because it has a navy. Lots of other countries that have basically gone down the route of going, maybe that's not so important, will be looking at this and thinking, perhaps that's a bit premature of an attitude to
Interesting
take.
point. Let's turn to the Eye, and headline there, sacked Foreign Office boss will fight back against Starmer in public showdown. This is Ollie Robbins, who's due, we read, to give evidence to Parliament on Tuesday.
Yeah, and that's going to be exciting to listen to, to hear what he has to say. He clearly does not feel particularly happy about all of this. I think quite justifiably he will feel that he has been made the scapegoat for a Prime Minister who everybody expects to be on his way out in one way or another as a result of this story. Obviously, we wait and hear as to what it is that he has to say. But ultimately, we're still here talking about Keir Starmer and his blunder in appointing Peter Mandelson in the first place. It almost, therefore, doesn't matter what Ollie Robbins comes out and says next week. That's all anybody's thinking about. Of course, it will. It will. But the main thing is, in the view of the electorate, and therefore in the minds of MPs, what are they thinking about again? Keir Starmer made Peter Mandelson the ambassador to the United States. That was a very serious mistake. That's the top line, and that's what everybody keeps on being reminded of.
Another angle to the story, which is on the front page of the Daily Mail, Zoe. 2 of Keir Starmer's top aides knew about the latest Peter Mandelson scandal for weeks.
But this is it. There is there's a culture of dishonesty in the team around Starmer, whether or not we say Starmer is technically honest or technically dishonest. So do you remember the Morgan McSweeney phone scandal, where he got his phone stolen and it was all very convenient and all his WhatsApp messages between him and Mandelson had disappeared. Then Number 10 said, no, that happened weeks. They basically misgave the actual date of the theft, so that it was before the FT story about Mandelson rather than after, as though, how could he possibly have known? This was nothing to do with it. And this is basically retreading that, who knew what when, is something they've really fudged a number of times, and it's not that easy to fudge it. in the end, it will always come out.
We are running out of time, so let's move on to the Times. Farage vows to undo Labour's attempted Brexit reset. This was page 2 of the Times.
This was the thing I went to this morning about, which was... Oh, well, actually, I think it might be embargoed. Oh. No, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine.
Can you talk?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So well, it's in the Times, apparently.
Basically, no, it was polling about public attitudes to the EU, and what Farage is talking about is the current government's strategy, which is kind of closer and closer convergence, but a kind of very technical, very difficult, full of compromise. You know, oh, we're probably going to have to pay the EU to get that kind of proximity, but there's, you know, blah, blah, blah. Farage is like, no, we don't want this, I'll unpick it. Actually, only 2 in 5 people don't like it. 3 in 5 people do like it, but it's a compromise solution, because when you really go into the data, the only thing with any kind of positive support is, guess what? Rejoining.
Oh.
You heard it here first.
Benedict.
I don't think.
Cover your ears.
I don't think listen, I don't think this country is ever going to rejoin the European Union. Partly because I don't think the European Union is smart enough at playing politics with the British public. What they'll do is they'll set out exactly what their plans are ahead of time, and that would be to punish the British for having left in the first place. Yeah, at which point everybody would turn around and go, well, we don't want that. That was rather stupid. They did this last time when Cameron went to them and said, please give me a fig leaf, give me a concession, and they went no, and then we voted to leave. I just don't think that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
it's not a good block at playing politics.
The thing is, I don't think the EU will want us back, so it's not really like this is what's going to happen.
Who couldn't possibly want us back? We're wonderful. We're lovely. We're charming. We don't build toilet seats in cars, which is something else that we might come to in a second.
Leads us on to our final story. I think we're going to have time for. Tell us about these.
Tell us about
these cars with toilets.
Well, basically, Chinese civilization has peaked. They've come up with a brand new patent. Oh, I say they have. A company has, where they are going to put lavatory seats inside these electric vehicles. I think that this is a terrible idea because it means that you'll never actually have to leave your car, and this will be the future of all of humanity is constantly trapped in a traffic jam, basically because there's a shortage on energy, so you can't get anywhere because Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz again, which he will have renamed to the Gulf of Trump. Honestly, there is just some things in life that don't need to be done, and it's the Jurassic Park line. Your scientists were so obsessed with working out whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think whether or not they should. And that's what a lavatory in a car is.
Zoe, do you think it's necessary? Is this the invention that we're missing in our lives?
I'm actually prepared to just take Benedict's opinion on that. This is as bad as Jurassic Park seems completely reasonable.
I think some people might find it useful.
Ironically, of course, the guy in Jurassic Park who gets eaten on the lavatory could have done with one of these because then he wouldn't have had to get out of the car. There you go. That would have been a major plot twist.
Brilliant roundup of that story, Zoe. Benedict, thank you so much for taking us
Thank you.
Coming up in the sport, Coventry City end their quarter-of-a-century exile from the Premier League.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond. You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna.
We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear-gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing. We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it.
bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagir, Sky News.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Let's catch up on all of the sports news now with Gavin.
John will, talks about it as the best medical he ever failed. It seems strange you get so far down the line and a player of his calibre, the possibility of signing him, it would have been a massive threat had he signed for Rangers, but thankfully he didn't.
It's very, very seldom you see a player in the building walking around at a club and the deal isn't done, but historically Rangers have been stung a couple of times signing players who had glitches, you might say, in America. Famously Daniel Prodan was one a number of years earlier, but there had been others as well, and I think they'd reached the stage where they weren't going to take any more risk.
And then I failed a medical at Charlton.
John Hartson was last week tipped to be on his way across South London for £5 million. But for the time being, that seems a dead deal.
Been a lot of speculation, and if there was any chance, it would have been done.
Spent the day with Alan Kirbishley, walking around the valley and being in the training ground. And I was training every day. I was scoring goals every weekend. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't pass a medical because of this knee.
I'm not bitter, no, not at all. I'm not a bitter person, I just get on with life. I've got no problems with my knee or nothing, I'm lashing balls in and everything else. And it does get a bit, frustrating at times. People keep going on about medicals and that. So that does unsettle me a little bit.
I shouldn't think you want to see another one again, do you?
No, I don't. I don't want to do any more medicals, to be honest.
So I'm starting to question myself. I think my previous managers were saying, John's fine. He's doing everything asked of him on the training ground. He's playing every week. He's scoring goals. But for some reason, I just couldn't pass this medical. And it was very, very frustrating. It was quite worrying, actually. I'm starting to think, well, where do I go from here?
As transfer soap operas go, this one was beginning to rival Coronation Street. Wimbledon have waived their £5 million fee. The Sky Blues will pay every time the Welsh international pulls on their shirt.
He's had injuries, but if you look at his record of playing, he plays a lot of games.
It's all about pressure, this game, anyway. If you can't handle pressure, you're in the wrong game.
I actually failed the medical first time around at Coventry, but it was Gordon Strachan that pushed it forward and obviously did the deal.
We tried to buy John from Wimbledon a few months before, but then Rangers came in. John failed the medical. We went back to Wimbledon, ended up doing a deal with Wimbledon to buy John for $750,000. I trusted Gordon implicitly. If Gordon felt strongly enough and he'd got a a commitment out of John that John knew his own body. He'd certainly not miss games for the sake of his knee.
Coventry.
Weather next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
With high pressure building from the west, the weather is set to turn drier and brighter this weekend, though there will be a few showers around. That's certainly the case for northern and western parts of the British Isles, where the blustery showers continue into Saturday morning. Elsewhere, it's a largely dry start with any lingering cloud and rain, soon clearing the far southeast. For much of southern England, it's set to be a fine and dry day, but there will be a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers elsewhere. The showers will be heaviest and most frequent across northern Scotland, with gusty winds and a risk of hail and thunder. As pressure builds into the evening, the showers will slowly die out from the southwest, though a few may linger across the Midlands, East Anglia and northern Scotland. Once any overnight fog lifts, most places will be dry with light winds and sunny spells on Sunday.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, that was the wrap. Thank you so much for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News next. Do stay with us.
We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Hello, you're watching Sky News. I'm Nick Qureshi. Here are the headlines. Oil prices